I used to think a laugh could fix anything. That if you just smiled, kept your tone light, people would forget what hurt. That was before that night, the one my husband still pretends never happened. It started like any other Friday. The air was sticky with the kind of summer heat that makes you move slower, drink faster. We were out with his friends, the same group he'd known since college. Loud, confident men who told stories that always ended with laughter and empty glasses. I'd gotten used to sitting there, smiling in the right places, keeping my hands folded in my lap. Mark, my husband, had that charm people like him always do. The kind that made strangers lean in like they already knew him. He could make anyone laugh, but lately, he'd stopped trying with me. I noticed small things, how he didn't reach for my hand when we crossed the street anymore, how his laugh changed when he talked to others. The bar that night was dim, heavy with music that made conversation half-shouted. His friends were already a few drinks in when we arrived. I remember one of them, Jason, I think, slapping Mark on the shoulder and saying, "Man, she actually came out this time." They all laughed. I smiled like it didn't sting. I ordered a soda instead of wine. Mark noticed, but didn't say anything. Maybe he thought I was just being boring again. The table talk turned louder. Stories, teasing, the usual. I drifted in and out. My attention caught on a group of younger people at the next table. They looked free in that way people do before life starts weighing them down. Then Jason leaned across the table and said something too low for me to hear that made Mark grin. Not his usual grin, though. This one was sharper, edged with something mean. "Come on," he said, turning to me. "It's just a joke." I didn't even know what he meant yet, but my stomach went tight. There's a tone people get when they say it's just a joke. You learn to recognize it. The one that means someone's going to get hurt, but we'll all laugh anyway. Mark stood, phone in hand. The others followed, grinning like they already knew the punchline. "Stay here," he said to me, voice too casual. "You'll see." They disappeared toward the parking lot, their laughter trailing behind like a bad echo. I sat there, alone at the table, watching condensation drip down my untouched glass. 5 minutes passed, then 10. When my phone buzzed, it was from an unknown number. A message. Just one photo. Mark's car, headlights off, parked at the edge of a dark road. And something or someone lying in front of it. I remember standing up so fast my chair hit the floor. The bar noise faded. All I could hear was my heartbeat. That was the moment I realized the prank wasn't funny. It was the beginning of everything that would fall apart. I remember walking out of that bar without even realizing I'd left my bag behind. The sound outside was different, quieter, colder. The laughter and music muffled behind the walls felt like another world entirely. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone steady, staring at that photo again and again. It didn't look real. The body, or what I thought was a body, was just a shape in the dark, pale under the car's headlights. I tried calling Mark. Straight to voicemail. Then Jason. Then Ryan. Nothing. We'd been married for almost 8 years. Long enough to know the rhythm of his voice when he lied, the way he'd turn his head slightly, just enough to avoid my eyes. But I'd never known him to be cruel. Not like this. People say you truly get to know someone in small moments, not the big ones. I think that's true. You notice the sighs, the pauses, the way they choose silence over apology. Lately, Mark had been choosing silence a lot. Our marriage hadn't fallen apart in one blow. It was more like a slow leak. 1,000 tiny things we didn't say. Missed dinners, unreturned calls, jokes that landed wrong. I kept trying to believe it was just a rough patch, that love could weather a little distance. But that night, something in me shifted. I could feel it, like the first crack in glass before it shatters. I started walking toward the parking lot, half running by the time I reached the street. My shoes slapped against the pavement, heart hammering in my throat. Every sound, an engine starting, a car, door slamming, made me jump. When I got there, the spot was empty. No car, no lights, just tire marks leading away. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in the heavy summer air, feeling stupid for even coming out. Maybe it was just a prank. Maybe they were trying to scare me, record my reaction, make it part of some joke I'd never understand. But the photo, the stillness in it, stayed with me. When Mark finally called, his voice sounded too bright, too rehearsed. "Hey, you okay? We're heading back in a bit. Don't freak out, okay?" "Mark," I said, my throat dry. "What did you do?" He laughed softly, like I'd missed the punchline. "Nothing. You'll see. It's fine." Then the line went dead. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the phone screen. The night pressed in around me, thick and heavy, like it knew something I didn't. That was when I realized whatever this prank was, it wasn't over. It had only just begun. By the time Mark and his friends came back into the bar, I was sitting in the same spot, my untouched drink now just a glass of melted ice. They were laughing, talking over each other, acting like nothing had happened. Mark slid into the seat beside me and wrapped an arm loosely around my shoulders, the way someone does when they're pretending to care who's watching. I could smell the beer on his breath. "You look pale," he said. "What's wrong?" I just stared at him. "You sent me that photo." He blinked, his grin faltering for just a second before he said, "What photo?" Jason snorted from across the table. "Man, she saw it already?" That was fast. Ryan elbowed him, muttering something under his breath, but it was too late. I'd heard enough. "Was that supposed to be funny?" I asked. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to, but there was an edge in it too. Mark leaned in close, lowering his tone. "It was a prank, okay? We didn't mean anything by it. Relax. Relax." That word. He said it all the time, when he was late, when he forgot, when he wanted me to stop asking questions. But the look in Jason's eyes told me there was more to it. Something they weren't saying. I wanted to leave right then, but part of me stayed, not because I forgave him, but because I needed to understand. Needed to know why my husband thought it was funny to make me believe someone was hurt. Later that night, when we got home, the silence between us felt heavier than anything we'd said. Mark tossed his keys on the counter and went straight to the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. I stood by the doorway, watching him. "Who was in that photo, Mark?" He didn't look up. "No one. Just some setup. Don't overthink it." "I'm not overthinking. I'm asking." Finally, he looked at me. "You always do this," he said quietly. "Turn everything into something bigger than it is." The words landed like a slap. Not loud, but sharp enough to sting. I went to bed without another word, but I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard his phone buzz. A message, short and quiet in the dark. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It wasn't from any of his friends. Just a single text, no name, only a number I didn't recognize. "You told her yet?" My stomach twisted. "Told me what?" That's when I realized this wasn't just a prank. It was a secret, and I was the last one to know. The next morning, Mark acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee, hummed under his breath, asked if I wanted toast. All the small gestures of a man pretending things were fine. But I couldn't stop thinking about that message. "You told her yet?" He noticed I was quiet. "You're still upset," he said finally. "I just want to understand what really happened last night." Mark sighed, setting his mug down a little too hard. "You're reading into things again. It was stupid, that's all. We thought it'd be funny to mess with Jason, and you sent me the photo." I interrupted. He hesitated. It was small, just a flicker, but it was there. "I didn't. Maybe someone used my phone. You know how they are. Someone used your phone to send me a picture of your car and a body in front of it." He didn't answer, just rubbed his forehead like I was the problem. That was the moment I realized I might not get the truth from him, not if I kept asking directly. When he left for work, I checked his phone again. No new messages, but the one from the unknown number was gone. Deleted. By noon, I couldn't sit still. I drove to the bar, hoping someone had seen him that night. The bartender remembered the group, loud, a little drunk, out by the parking lot for a while. He said he'd heard arguing, then laughter. "Sounded like someone got scared pretty bad," he said with a shrug. "But everyone came back fine. Everyone except me, I thought." On the way home, I passed the same dark road from the photo. For a moment, I almost didn't want to stop, but something in me wouldn't let it go. The air was still, unnaturally quiet. I parked and stepped out, gravel crunching under my shoes. There were faint tire marks and something else. A small, torn piece of fabric caught on a branch near the ditch. Blue cotton. Mark's shirt from last night had been blue. When I got home, he was already there, sitting on the couch, scrolling his phone again. I set the fabric down on the coffee table. He looked up, eyes tightening just slightly. Where did you get that? You tell me. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat there, the silence stretching so long I could hear the faint tick of the clock. Finally, he said, "You shouldn't have gone there." Something in his tone made the air shift, quiet, but sharp enough to make me take a step back. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a prank that went too far. It was something he never meant for me to find. He said it so calmly, "You shouldn't have gone there." Like I'd stepped somewhere dangerous. Like there was a line I wasn't supposed to cross. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The house felt too still, the air too heavy. Mark's eyes stayed on the fabric scrap lying between us. He looked less surprised and more cornered. "I asked you something," I said quietly. "What really happened last night?" He leaned back, arms crossed. "You wouldn't believe me even if I told you." "Try me." He exhaled through his nose, rubbed his jaw, and for the first time that day, maybe the first time in weeks, he looked at me like I wasn't just his wife, but someone he owed the truth to. "It was supposed to be a prank," he started. "Jason dared me to fake something, to make it look like I hit someone. Just for laughs. He said he'd record your reaction when I sent the photo." I stared at him, trying to process the words. "That's not a joke, Mark. That's cruel." "I know," he said quickly. "But when I went back to the spot later, the fake body we used, it was gone." I blinked. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" He nodded slowly, almost to himself. "We made it look real. We used a mannequin Jason had in his garage, covered it with an old jacket. But when we drove back after, it wasn't there. No one touched it, no one took it. It was just gone." I felt my stomach twist again. "So you're telling me you thought it was funny to scare me, and now you're saying something actually happened?" Mark's voice dropped. "I don't know. Maybe someone saw us. Maybe someone moved it. But that text, the one you saw, wasn't from Jason or Ryan. They swear they didn't send it." The room went cold. "Then who did?" He didn't answer, just kept glancing toward his phone as if waiting for it to light up again. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the living room, replaying everything. The photo, the tone in his voice, the missing mannequin. At 1:12 a.m., his phone buzzed again on the counter. This time, I didn't hesitate. I picked it up. The same number. "You can't hide it forever." I felt the blood drain from my face. Before I could think, Mark appeared in the doorway, half asleep or pretending to be. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice rough. "Who's texting you?" He stared at me, then the phone. His expression flickered. Fear, confusion, something else. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "I think someone followed us that night." A chill went through me. "Followed you?" He nodded. And to know what we did. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt watched. By the next morning, the tension in the house felt unbearable. Mark barely spoke. His phone stayed face down on the counter, as if he was afraid of what might appear next. I couldn't shake the message from my mind. You can't hide it forever. I needed answers. So when he left for work, I followed. Not because I didn't trust him, that part was already gone, but because I had to know what he wasn't telling me. He didn't go to his office. Instead, he drove out of town, past the gas stations and coffee shops, until the streets thinned into open road. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I kept a few cars behind, heart pounding with every turn. Finally, he stopped. It was the same road from the photo, the same dark stretch lined with trees and silence. He got out of the car and walked toward the ditch. I parked a short distance away, watching as he crouched down, brushing at the dirt with his hands like he was searching for something. Then his phone buzzed. I could see the glow from where I sat. He looked at the screen, froze, and turned sharply toward my car. He knew I was there. I stepped out before he could reach me. "Just tell me the truth, Mark," I shouted. He stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." He looked past me, not at me, his voice cracking. "We thought it was fake. All of it. But when we came back that night, the mannequin was gone, and there were marks on the ground. Like someone had dragged something." My stomach dropped. "Dragged?" He nodded. "We thought maybe someone saw us." Or he stopped himself. Then the messages started. First me, then Jason. He got one yesterday, too. What did it say? Mark's voice was barely a whisper. It said, "You think you buried it deep enough?" A sound came from the trees, faint but clear, a twig snapping. Both of us froze. "Mark," I whispered, "there's someone out there." He turned, scanning the dark line of trees, his face pale. I know. And his phone buzzed again in his hand. A new message. He looked down, eyes widening. It's a photo. He turned the screen toward me. It was us, standing there on that same road, taken from somewhere behind the trees. And beneath it, just one sentence. Now you understand. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of a car, door closing. Not ours. We weren't alone. The sound from the trees stopped as suddenly as it started. Mark's flashlight swept across the branches, the beam trembling in his hand. Nothing. Just shadows. Still, we both knew someone had been there. We didn't speak the whole drive home. The road behind us stayed empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen followed us. Not a person, but the weight of what we'd done, what we didn't yet understand. When we got home, Mark finally sat down at the kitchen table. His hands were shaking. It's over, he said quietly. We delete the messages, forget it happened. But I couldn't. The next day, I called the local police. I didn't tell Mark. I just showed them the photo, the messages, and where it happened. The officer listened, asked a few questions, then promised to look into it. A week passed, then another. No more messages. The nights grew quieter, but the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like waiting. Finally, the officer called. They'd searched the area, dug a little near where Mark had been crouching. Nothing. No mannequin. No evidence. No sign of anyone else. Could have been a prank within a prank, he said. People film everything these days. Maybe he was right. Maybe someone had been watching the whole time, turning our panic into entertainment. Or maybe the real joke was how easily fear can take root, how guilt and silence make shadows look alive. Mark didn't like talking about it after that. He avoided the bar, stopped seeing his friends. For the first time in years, the house stayed quiet. Not angry quiet, just empty. One evening, I found his phone on the counter again. I shouldn't have looked, but old habits die hard. In his recent messages, the unknown number was gone, deleted. Except one draft remained unsent. I'm sorry. We didn't mean for it to go that far. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I deleted the draft and put the phone down. Some things I realized don't need to be explained. They just need to end. Now, when I drive past that dark stretch of road, I still feel that same chill, a quiet reminder that not every secret wants to stay buried. People say pranks are harmless fun, but that night taught me something else. Sometimes what starts as a joke doesn't end in laughter. Sometimes it ends in silence, and the kind you never forget. The sound from the trees stopped as suddenly as it started. Mark's flashlight swept across the branches, the beam trembling in his hand. Nothing. Just shadows. Still, we both knew someone had been there. We didn't speak the whole drive home. The road behind us stayed empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen followed us. Not a person, but the weight of what we'd done, what we didn't yet understand. When we got home, Mark finally sat down at the kitchen table. His hands were shaking. It's over, he said quietly. We delete the messages, forget it happened. But I couldn't. The next day, I called the local police. I didn't tell Mark. I just showed them the photo, the messages, and where it happened. The officer listened, asked a few questions, then promised to look into it. A week passed, then another. No more messages. The nights grew quieter, but the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like waiting. Finally, the officer called. They'd searched the area, dug a little near where Mark had been crouching. Nothing. No mannequin. No evidence. No sign of anyone else. Could have been a prank within a prank, he said. People film everything these days. Maybe he was right. Maybe someone had been watching the whole time, turning our panic into entertainment. Or maybe the real joke was how easily fear can take root, how guilt and silence make shadows look alive. Mark didn't like talking about it after that. He avoided the bar, stopped seeing his friends. For the first time in years, the house stayed quiet, not angry quiet, just empty. One evening, I found his phone on the counter again. I shouldn't have looked, but old habits die hard. In his recent messages, the unknown number was gone, deleted. Except one draft remained unsent. I'm sorry. We didn't mean for it to go that far. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I deleted the draft and put the phone down. Some things I realized don't need to be explained. They just need to end. Now, when I drive past that dark stretch of road, I still feel that same chill, a quiet reminder that not every secret wants to stay buried. People say pranks are harmless fun, but that night taught me something else. Sometimes, what starts as a joke doesn't end in laughter. Sometimes, it ends in silence, and the kind you never forget.